The moving truck was already idling in the driveway, spewing exhaust into the crisp autumn air. My Aunt Brenda stood on the porch, a clipboard in hand, tapping her foot with impatient glee. She looked at my grandmother, her own mother, not with love, but like she was an expired carton of milk that needed to be tossed out. "It's for your own good, Mother," Brenda sneered, checking her watch. "The developers are coming at noon to finalize the demolition permits." They thought they had won. They thought the estate was theirs to liquidate. But as I stepped out of the shadowed corner of the porch, wearing my old field jacket and a scowl, they didn't realize two things. One, I wasn't the deadbeat grandson they remembered. And two, the house they were so eager to sell had been in my name for 5 years. Let me explain exactly why I was thought of as the deadbeat grandson, and why I let them continue believing it. The rain was coming down in sheets when I pulled my motorcycle up to the wrought iron gates of the Blackwood estate. It had been 7 years. 7 years of silence, sand, and covert operations that I couldn't tell a soul about. To the world, and specifically to my family, Liam Blackwood was a dropout, a drifter, a disappointment who vanished after high school. To the United States government, I was Commander Liam Blackwood, a specialist in logistical asset recovery. I cut the engine. The vibration died, replaced by the sound of thunder rolling over the hills. I looked up the long driveway. The estate was beautiful, a sprawling Victorian manor that had been in our family for 4 generations, but it looked tired. The hedges were overgrown. The paint was peeling slightly on the west wing. I wasn't here for a reunion. I was here because of a voicemail. "Liam," my grandmother's voice had cracked on the recording 3 days ago. "I don't know if you'll ever get this number, but they're doing it. Brenda and Gary, they're putting me in the Sunnyvale facility on Friday. They say the house is too much for me. They say I have no money left. Please, if you're out there, I just wanted to say goodbye." I clenched my jaw so hard a muscle feathered in my cheek. I tapped the gate code. It hadn't changed. As I rode up the driveway, I saw the chaos. 2 luxury sedans were parked haphazardly near the fountain, a silver Mercedes and a red BMW. My Aunt Brenda and Uncle Gary. The vultures were circling. I parked the bike behind a large oak tree, out of sight. I wanted to walk in. I wanted to hear them. I walked up the porch steps, the wood creaking under my combat boots. The front door was ajar. Inside, the foyer was filled with boxes. I could hear voices drifting from the parlor. "Mother, stop being dramatic." Brenda's voice was shrill, cutting through the air like a serrated knife. "Sunnyvale is a luxury community. You'll have activities, bingo, water aerobics." "I don't like water," my grandmother Rose replied. Her voice was small, trembling. It broke my heart. She used to be a lioness. Now she sounded like a frightened bird. "It doesn't matter what you like, frankly," Uncle Gary chimed in. I could hear the clink of glass. He was drinking her scotch. "The property taxes alone are eating us alive. We found a buyer, a developer. They're going to raise it, put up condos. The offer is expiring in 48 hours. We need you out." "But your father built this house," Rose pleaded. "He wanted it to stay in the family." "Dad is dead," Gary snapped, "and the money is gone. You're destitute, Rose. You can't afford to heat this place, let alone fix the roof. We are doing you a favor by taking power of attorney." I stepped into the doorway of the parlor. "She said no," I said, my voice low and gravelly. The room went silent. Brenda, holding a stack of legal documents, spun around. Gary, mid-sip of a 30-year-old single malt, nearly choked. Grandma Rose looked up from her armchair, her eyes widening behind her glasses. "Liam?" she whispered. Brenda squinted at me, her nose wrinkling as she took in my appearance. I was wearing faded jeans, dirty boots, and a nondescript olive jacket. I hadn't shaved in 3 days. I looked like I had just walked off a freight train, which was exactly how I wanted to look. "Good Lord," Brenda scoffed. "Look what the cat dragged in. The prodigal loser returns." "Hello, Aunt Brenda," I said, not moving. "Uncle Gary, put the scotch down. It's not yours." Gary laughed, a wet, arrogant sound. "Still got an attitude for a homeless bum. What are you doing here, Liam? Come to beg for a handout before the old lady gets shipped off?" I walked over to Grandma and knelt beside her chair. I took her hand. It was frail and cold. "Hi, Grams," I smiled softly. "I got your message." She gripped my hand with surprising strength. "You came? You look thin." "I've been busy," I said. "Busy doing what?" Brenda interrupted, marching over. "Begging for change in the city? Look, Liam, this is a private family matter involving high-level finances, something you wouldn't understand. We're in the middle of a transition." "Transition?" I stood up and faced her. I was 6'4". Brenda had to crane her neck to look me in the eye. "You mean an eviction." "It's a mercy," Gary shouted, slamming his glass down. "She has dementia. She can't manage this estate." "I don't have dementia," Rose cried out. "I just forgot to pay the electric bill one month." "Because you have no money," Gary roared. "The bank accounts are dry, Rose. The maintenance costs are astronomical. We've been supporting you for 6 months." I knew for a fact that was a lie. I had been monitoring Rose's accounts remotely. The support Gary mentioned was him taking money out of her account to pay for his car lease, labeled as management fees. "So the solution is to sell the house to a developer?" I asked calmly. "It's the only asset left," Brenda said, waving the papers. "We sell the house, pay for her nursing home, and manage the remainder of the estate for her." "Meaning you pocket the difference," I said. Brenda's face flushed red. "How dare you, you ungrateful little brat! You haven't been here in 7 years. You have no say in this. In fact, you're trespassing. I should call the police." "Go ahead," I said. I pulled a chair out and sat down, crossing my legs. "Call them, but until they get here, nobody is signing anything." Gary stood up, his face purple. "Listen to me, boy. This deal is happening today. The notary is on his way. Once Rose signs this power of attorney, this house is sold, and you will be removed from the premises, forcibly if necessary." "And if she doesn't sign?" I asked. "Then the state takes her," Brenda said coldly. "She's declared incompetent. We get control anyway. It just takes longer. This way is easier for everyone. Don't make this hard, Liam. Here, take $100. She reached into her purse and pulled out a crisp bill. "Go get a hot meal and a haircut. Leave the adults to handle business." The disrespect was palpable. It hung in the air like smoke. I looked at the $100 bill, then up at Brenda. I didn't take it. "I'm staying," I said. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It wasn't the police. It was a man in a cheap suit carrying a briefcase, Mr. Henderson, the notary, and apparently their shady lawyer. "Ah, good. Everyone is here," Henderson said, wiping rain from his glasses. He ignored me completely, assuming I was hired help. He spread the documents on the coffee table. "Mrs. Blackwood, if you could just sign here, here, and here. This transfers the deed to the trust managed by Brenda and Gary and authorizes the sale to OmniCorp developers." Grandma Rose looked at the papers, her hands shaking. She looked at me. "Liam, I don't want to go to the home. I want to stay in my garden." "Sign the papers, Mother," Gary growled. "Don't make a scene." "She's not signing," I said. I reached out and put my hand over the papers. Henderson looked at me annoyed. "Excuse me, sir, you are interfering with a legal proceeding." "And you," I said to Henderson, "are facilitating elder abuse and fraud." "That is a serious accusation," Henderson sputtered. "Liam, get your dirty hands off the table," Brenda shrieked. "Gary, throw him out." Gary, who had played football in high school 30 years ago and hadn't exercised since, lunged at me. He grabbed my jacket collar. It was a mistake. Instinct took over. In one fluid motion, I grabbed his wrist, applied pressure to a nerve cluster, and twisted. Gary yelped and dropped to his knees, his arm pinned behind his back. I didn't break it, I just immobilized him. Sit down, Gary, I whispered. I shoved him back onto the sofa. He gasped, clutching his arm, staring at me with fear. Brenda screamed, "You're a maniac! I'm calling the sheriff!" Brenda fumbled for her phone. "Call him," I said. "Actually, I already did. He should be here any minute, along with Mr. Sterling." The room went dead silent. Even Henderson froze. "Mr. Sterling?" Brenda whispered. The bank president?" "The very same," I said. "Why would the bank president come here?" Gary wheezed. "To clear up a misunderstanding regarding the ownership of this property," I said. Just then, heavy headlights swept across the windows. A police cruiser and a sleek black town car pulled up. Sheriff Miller, an old friend of my grandfather, walked in first, looking stern. Behind him was Mr. Sterling, carrying a thick leather portfolio. "Sheriff, thank God!" Brenda cried, running to him. "Arrest him! My nephew, he's violent! He attacked Gary! He's trying to extort us!" Sheriff Miller looked at Gary, then at me. He nodded respectfully at me. "Commander Blackwood, good to see you back." Brenda froze. "Commander?" "Hello, Sheriff," I said. "Sorry to drag you out in the rain." "No trouble, son. Mr. Sterling has some paperwork to read?" Mr. Sterling stepped forward. He placed his portfolio on the table, right on top of Brenda's eviction papers. "What is going on?" Gary demanded. "We are in the middle of a sale." "There can be no sale," Mr. Sterling said, his voice crisp and professional, "because Mrs. Rose Blackwood does not own this property. Therefore, she cannot transfer it to you." Brenda blinked, confused. "What? Of course she owns it. Dad left it to her." "She did own it," Sterling corrected, "until 5 years ago, when the estate was facing foreclosure due to the bad investments you advised her to make, Gary." Gary turned pale. "The bank was about to seize the property," Sterling continued. "However, a private investor stepped in. They paid off the entire outstanding mortgage, $350,000, plus 5 years of property taxes in advance. They also established a blind trust to pay for all utilities and maintenance staff, which I believe you fired, Brenda, to pocket the cash." Brenda was trembling. Who bought it?" Sterling turned and gestured to me. "The deed is currently held by the Blackwood Trust. The sole beneficiary and trustee is Commander Liam Blackwood." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and absolutely delicious. Grandma Rose looked at me, tears in her eyes. "Liam, you bought the house?" "I did, Grams," I said gently. "I used my re-enlistment bonuses and hazard pay. I didn't want you to worry, so I had the bank keep it anonymous. You have a life estate. That means you live here, for free, forever. Nobody can move you." Brenda stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "But you're broke. You look like a hobo." "Camouflage, Brenda," I said, brushing dust off my jacket. "In my line of work, you learn not to flash your assets. And speaking of assets, Sheriff?" Sheriff Miller stepped forward. "Brenda Blackwood, Gary Blackwood, I have warrants here for your arrest." "Arrest!" shrieked Gary. "Embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse," I listed them off. "I had a forensic accountant look at Graham's finances for the last 6 months. You drained her savings. You didn't pay the electric bill. You bought a boat, Gary. We have the receipts." "This is a mistake," wailed Brenda as the sheriff handcuffed her. "We were just trying to help her." "You were trying to help yourselves," I said, my voice cold. "You thought I was gone. You thought she was defenseless. You were wrong." As the sheriff led them out into the rain, Gary looked back at me. "You can't do this to family." "You stopped being family when you tried to sell my grandmother to a nursing home for a payout," I replied. "Get them out of here." When the door closed, the house was quiet again. The lawyer, Henderson, had quietly slipped out the back door during the commotion, but Sterling assured me he'd be reported to the Bar Association. I turned to Grandma. She was crying, but they were happy tears now. "I thought you were a soldier," she said, touching my face. "I was," I said. "Now, I'm just a guy who's gonna fix your roof." I spent the next year restoring the Blackwood estate. I hired nurses to help Rose, not to control her, but to care for her. I used the rest of my savings to start a security firm from the home office. Brenda and Gary are currently serving 3 to 5 years for fraud. They send letters sometimes, asking for money for the commissary. I burn them in the fireplace. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just rain on the roof of a house that belongs to the right people, and the silence of a phone that doesn't ring with bad news anymore.